Stephen King, Dan Brown, what's their secret to writing hit after hit? It's not luck, it is process. And today I'm bringing you their very best advice. Let's get started.
It is true, and what happens to me a lot of times is I will start out saying this would be a terrific short story idea, and it balloons and becomes a novel. Misery started as a short story, and Gerald's Game started as a short story. Those were things that I thought would be small and grew to a size where they would be a novel.
You have a very methodical approach to how you do the books. Describe the process.
So this screen shows the first draft, draft A. On the right-hand side are notes from various people who have seen the first draft. And you'll see here, somebody who works for me says, I was not drawn in as quickly, nor did I read it as fast as the last two books. So that's interesting, isn't it? Mm. That suggests that the first chapter might be a bit ponderous. So
maybe you haven't got your plot twist every 3 to 4 pages that you like to have.
And then in the middle, this is the second draft, but what I would be doing is writing this second draft. And I key it. I don't take this and edit it and make marks on it. I take a blank sheet of paper in the middle and then I start writing the whole book again.
Which must take longer than going over the first draft and just
Absolutely.
editing it.
Well, it takes a full year. So planning is a year, first draft is a year, second draft is a year. It sounds as if it's a chore that might not be essential, you know. And sometimes my publishers want to publish the first draft. But that's because their standards aren't as high as mine. And generally after reading the second draft, they say, I see what you mean.
And you think by writing the second draft from scratch, you always end up with a better product?
Oh, definitely, no question. I'm totally convinced of that.
The creative process is a long one for me. I wish it weren't so long, but it is. It generally starts with a location, deciding I want to write in Florence, for example, with Inferno. A location and also a big idea. And in this case, it was a big idea to write about Dante's Divine Comedy, Inferno in particular. I will go to that place, I will research, looking for inspiration, and I'll take a whole lot of notes. I'll come back, start to put together a structure, and then once I have a structure and know exactly what the book's going to be about, then I'll go back a second and third time for all the details. And then, of course, there's about 1.5 years of actual writing, which is the hard part.
What's your writing process like? Do you get up at like 5 o'clock in the morning? Do you write, longhand? Do you have a computer? How do you do it?
Well, it's changed during COVID because there was nowhere to go and nothing to do. So I put my laptop on my nightstand every night in the morning around 7. I wake up, I grab a Diet Coke. I know, it's my secret vice.
Okay, well, I guess it's like a cup of coffee,
I don't drink
right?
coffee,
Right.
so I grab my laptop and I start writing. And before I go to sleep at night, I try to, if possible, sort of direct my thoughts into the book. Like, what kind of problem am I trying to solve in the next day's writing? And some nights it goes well and I wake up and I start writing. Other days I wake up and I start tearing my hair out.
Go where the story leads you. And in this case, I had no idea it was going to have a dark conclusion. You never know, and sometimes it's a big and powerful machine. The best description of writing a novel that I ever heard was actually in Thomas Williams's book, The Hair of Harold Rue, which is about a novelist trying to write a novel, and it just covers like 1 or 2 days in this process, and a lot of things happen to him. It's a fabulous book. But he says that writing a novel is like building a little campfire on an empty, dark plain. And one by one, these characters come out of the dark, and each one has a little pile of wood, and they put it on the fire. And if you're very lucky, before the fire goes out, it's this big bonfire, and all the characters stand around it and warm themselves. And that's the way it's always been for me. I have a good friend over in Vermont, John Irving, and John says that he always begins a novel by writing the last line. I could never write a book that way. The way that I think of it, is that fire. I love that particular image, but I've also always thought of it in terms of there's a little thread, a little red thread that goes into a hole in the baseboard, and you just start to pull it out. and you see what's on the other end of it, and sooner or later you get there. For me, the fun of writing novels isn't in the finished product, which I don't care about that much. I love the process. I tell the story to myself, and in a way, when the work is the best work, it's more like being a secretary than it is a creative person. You just sort of take this stuff down.
You reach a point where you have a critical mass, where you really need to start writing. As my wife would say about our 3 daughters, she said, you come to a point where you realize this baby has to come out. And that's how it was and how it is with books. You realize you have to start writing. You just feel that you need to get something down on paper. So I always start with what I refer to as my 1 page a day period, where I get up early, like around 5 o'clock. My goal is 1 good page a day. I write every day, 7 days a week. The only day I take off is Christmas. 1 page a day, and then the rest of the day is devoted to research. Gradually, and sometimes quite quickly, that 1 page becomes 2 pages, becomes 3 pages. And the next thing I know, I'm in the full-throated pursuit of the written first draft. And some of the research continues actually to the very end. And I start rewriting. I am a compulsive rewriter. I rewrite, I rewrite, I rewrite. I don't know how many drafts I've done. I think if you were to look at each sentence in the book, each sentence has probably been part of a rewrite at least 20 times.
I try to stay in the world of the novel as much as I can. So even if I have days where, say, I have to have my children at home and I'm really not going to have very much time to write, I try to get into the novel at least for sort of an hour or so a day, just to keep it fresh in my mind. The more time I spend out of it, it takes longer to get back into it when I come to work on it again. But also I find that I start to lose confidence in it. And when I'm actually sort of working on it, editing it, that confidence stays a little bit higher. So what I tend to do each day on writing days is sit down, I read back over whatever it was that I wrote the day before. I do a very light tinkering sort of an edit, and that sort of gets me back into the flow, and then I write forward from that. I don't tend to, at this stage, I'm editing at the moment, so I don't tend to look at word counts and things like that, because quite often I'm actually, at the moment, I'm trying to take away words rather than add words, so that isn't really relevant. But I will I would just set myself little sort of small deadlines within the big deadline. So I'll say, right, I've got to sort out this particular plot problem today, or I've got to get through, I've got 3 chapters that I need to kind of condense down to 1 chapter, and that's my little task for today. So you have to break down that huge deadline into smaller tasks.
Good morning. It's somewhere between 5:30 and 6, and this is the last week of 4 months of writing my novel. First thing I'm going to do is go to my computer, enter my health stats, then I'll check my email, and I'll catch up on the news. I just want all that stuff out of the way so my mind is clear and I'm not distracted when I'm doing my work. Now, it used to be that I would start with the writing or the editing and nothing else, but I found I was a little distracted because of those things I'd rather do, make sure they're out of the way. You do what works for you, but for me, I need all the distractions taken care of, and now I'm ready to get to work. When I started out, I had a plank that I stretched between 2 kitchen chairs and put those in front of the couch in the living room. Sat on the couch, that was my office. It wasn't comfortable, it probably wasn't healthy for my back, but that's how you work. You use what you can afford. I've got everything I need within arm's reach here. I've got a fan when it gets hot, I've got a heater when it gets cold, I've got my lighting, I've got all my research stacked. I know where everything is. Usually I'm a neatnik, but while I'm writing, this is what it's going to look like because it has to serve the purpose of the message. What I'm working on is what's important. I've got my cover that the publisher has already done a rough of, so it keeps me on track. I know what I'm doing. So now that everything's in place, I'm ready to do first things first. I will go back about 25 pages and do a heavy edit and rewrite. I call it ferocious self-edit. It's an aggressive self-edit. That's where the magic happens. Everything I did yesterday, those 10 or 20 pages, were simply the rough draft, getting the story down. Now I'm going to polish it, make it come together. This process takes longer for me than it used to because I've written a lot of books and I want each book to be better than the last. So I'm really working hard to polish and make it just the way I want it. Because of the technology, you can make something different all day. It's getting to the point where you know you've made it the best it can be, and you're not simply making it different, you're making it better. Once you've hit that point, you stop. I have a couple hours work to do to make yesterday's stuff work. That, in essence, is my second draft. And when I finish the entire manuscript, I'll go back through from page 1 all the way to the end for what, in essence, is a third draft, the last polish and rewrite. So I need to get to work. I'll see you in a couple hours.
Hey, thanks so much for watching. Check out the video that's coming on your screen. I'll see you in the next video.